Alright, so today I'm going to be recommending some books that I like and I think would be good to read during the summer. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Let's go. I just have them all in a pile right here. Okay, so the first one is the book that I'm reading right now. It's The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. And I've never read a Terry Pratchett book before, but he has so many, and so I'm really glad that I'm starting because there's like 40 just in this series. But yeah, so this is the first one in the Discworld series. I mean, I don't know if it's actually a series. I don't think you have to read them in order. They all just take place in the same world, but I wanted to start with the first one at least, just to like be on the safe side. Anyways, yeah, so this is basically very fun and kind of wacky magic. Like, it's not serious or anything like that, so it's really easy to read and it's short. So it's pretty quick. Like, you could read this in a day or two. I'm just haven't been reading that much because I've been really tired, so it's taking me a little bit. But like when I do sit down and read it, I read like a decent amount of it. The only thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't have chapter breaks. I personally prefer reading books with really short chapters because it's just like, it's kind of like, you know, when you're really tired and you're running and so you just are like, okay, once I make it to like that stop sign, I'm fine, and once I make it to that tree, I'm fine. It kind of like keeps you going. That's how I feel about books sometimes. And also it's just kind of like gives you a, like, yeah, it's like a checkpoint, like gives you a place to rest. Like you put your bookmark in like at the end of a chapter, but it's kind of hard. It's hard to do that because like it's kind of like part one, part two. So like here, I'll show you. So here's the beginning of this part that I'm currently on, and I'll show you where it ends. So this is where it ends. So that whole thing, there's no chapter break. And that's the only thing that kind of annoys me, but it's still a super good book so far. And yeah, so I'd recommend that. For starters, next book on the pile is The Chronicles of Narnia. I'm rereading them right now. I just finished a little while ago The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Oh my gosh, so freaking good and just so magical and just perfect for like a nice whimsical summer kind of escapism read, you know. This is just the first one, but yeah. And they're so short and like so easy to read. I love reading children's books sometimes because it's just like a different experience. It doesn't have to be as realistic as adult books tend to be. So I really just like that kind of freedom that they do with kids books. And kind of on that vein is The Doldrums. This is a series that I just started recently. I also have the second book that I've read, but I would recommend that in the winter just because it takes place in the winter. But this one, I think it takes place in the summer. Yeah, it does. It takes place during the summer. And it's just like very, it's not fantasy, but it almost comes across like that just because the characters are so like, I don't know, like unique and so well developed and just like so interesting that like they almost seem surreal. Basically it's this, it's about this kid named Archer B. Helmsley, and he has, his grandparents are like really famous explorers, and one day they go missing, and so he like makes these friends and they make a plan to go rescue them, and it's just kind of like a very fun, like whimsical, but not fantasy. But it's just so cute. I just really liked it. So yeah, and then this is, next we have Stardust by Neil Gaiman, which is a fantasy, and I absolutely love this book. I read it in 2 sittings. Like, I remember I literally read this until 3 in the morning when I finished, and I had class the next morning. But yeah, basically, I think I've mentioned this in a video before for sure, but if you don't know what it's about, this young kid named Tristan Thorne sees a falling star, and he promises this girl that he falls in love with that he'll go get it for her. And then she said she'll do whatever he wants, basically, if he does that. And then it's the story of his adventure, and it just turns out to be this great big adventure through the enchanted forest, and it follows a couple different perspectives, and I love that. It keeps you guessing the whole time, and you're like waiting for them to intersect, how they're going to affect each other, and oh, it's just great. And Neil Gaiman's writing is just like so incredible. I absolutely love him. And But yeah, it's just super good, so I definitely recommend that. It's definitely like more of an adult book. There's sex, there's in it, there's violence in it, but like not too much. There's just like there's one or two sex scenes that are pretty brief, like they're not super graphic, but they're obviously sex, and then there's some violence about like pretty gruesome mentions of violence. I don't know if anything super gruesome actually happens, but yeah, so it's definitely more of an adult kind of read, but super good. Next is this book called Silver by Andrew Motion, and this is kind of like a sequel to Treasure Island, which I don't have right now, but that's one I also want to mention, was Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. I read that 2 summers ago, I think, and it's like a pirate adventure story. It's a classic, like not too long. It's just so like swashbuckling and just such a classic. Like, anyway, so yeah, that one is also a recommendation. I loved it. And then this one is, like I said, kind of like a sequel to it. Obviously, it's by a different person, but it's a continuation. So it includes forget his name, but one of the original, I think his name is Jonathan. Yeah, who's in um, Treasure Island, his son, and it follows them. And like you can see, I like dog-eared so many pages. His writing was just super good, and like I was just so pleasantly surprised. It ended on such a great cliffhanger, and I didn't end up reading the second book, but it's fine. I do that so often. But yeah, it's been a little while since I read it, but I remember I really liked it. And look at that cover. That's just beautiful. And I got this on like super sales, like $2 at Chapters. It was great. So yeah, this is kind of one that I haven't heard anything about other than me reading it, but I think it's so underrated. Like, it's such a good book, so definitely read that if you can. Next is another classic, Lord of the Rings. I think these are so great to read during the summer because, you know, it's classic adventure, especially the first one because it's not as dark as the second two. Like, does that make sense? Second and third? I don't know. But you know, you're in the Shire, you've got Tom Bombadil, and just like, I don't know. I just think it's a good time, and yeah. It's a little bit like longer, kind of denser read, so I think during the summer, when you're kind of more, you have more time to like sit and enjoy the words, it's a good time to read it. So yeah. Next is one, like, I actually haven't read this. I've only read like a few little snippets of it. I am planning on reading it, so maybe I shouldn't really recommend it, but I'm planning on reading it. So I'll let you know after I do actually read it what I think. But Walden by Henry David Thoreau, and basically he like fucks off and lives in a forest by himself and writes about it, and about like self-reflection and all that kind of good stuff. And I just, like, it says, a positive and insightful look on human solitude. Walden remains a highly regarded work of transcendentalism, environmentalism, and individual enlightenment. I just think that's a great thing that people need to read about. So even though I haven't read it yet, I'm recommending that you do it and be better than me. Okay, so next we're kind of away from, well, this was kind of like a decent transition because this isn't really a novel, but so now we're kind of away from that. Next I'm going to talk about a few poetry books. And yeah, so first I have Ralph Waldo Emerson, and this is, obviously I haven't read it cover to cover, but there's a few poems in it that I really like, and I mean, it's been a while, but so I can't really remember. I want to reread. But he just writes so beautifully, and I just think it's such a great, like, atmosphere for summer, like sitting outside by a stream or in the forest, down by a meadow, you know, excuse me, just like enchant yourself a little bit. And same thing goes for these two. So again, haven't read them cover to cover, but I've read some poems within them, and I just think it's great. It's so beautiful. I've had some really nice moments to myself, just like sitting outside by a stream in the woods and just like reading these out loud quietly to myself. It's just such a beautiful atmosphere to create, and they just write about such interesting topics, and their words just flow so nicely. But yeah, I love these so much. And then the last one of poems that I have is Earth Songs, and I got this at like some random shop in the town that I work at. This is before I started working there, but and it's just like basically poems about the earth and the environment and stuff, and they're more modern poems than these ones, but I think that I my camera shut off, so I'm just going to rewind a little bit. I was talking about earth songs. So yeah, I was saying it's really important to go outside in nature. When the weather's warm, it's so much easier to do. It's beautiful outside, you can feel the warm air, and like reading basically like, you know, love poems and stuff that are to the earth. It's such a great way to connect. Oh, pull my thing down. Now I've been exposed. I haven't finished reupholstering this chair yet. No. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, it's so important, like especially now that we're getting so much more educated about the crisis that we're in with the environment. Every person who becomes more connected to Mother Earth is one more person that's going to treat her well, and that's how revolution starts, you know, as individual people growing and learning. And I think that, you know, like reading, I think this is one that will help with that too, and just like, you know, falling in love with nature, connecting more, you know, taking off your shoes, reading some earth poetry, and just, you know, having a nice peaceful time. I think that's so important, and it just does really make a big difference. And then the last thing I'm going to recommend for this video is this book, 1000 Ultimate Adventures, and I got this when I was living in Ottawa, and my friend and I would just go hang out in chapters together and look through different sections and just hang out there for like so long. And we were looking through this one, and I was like, we were leaving, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy it. Like, I think it's so cool. And basically, it just is so beautiful on the inside too. So like, it has different topics. So like, this one is going to extreme, so it has like different extreme conditions that are out there that you can go see. So yeah, it's just like all these different adventures in different places that you can go to. So yeah, I just think that this is awesome to like kind of get that wanderlust going, to go see the world and to see all it has to offer, and again, you know, connect with nature and then connect with different cultures and stuff. I just think it's so great to feed that part of yourself. So yeah, I think this is a great way. Like, all the little blurbs are so short, so it's not like a lot to digest all at once. You can just kind of take an overview, and it's so easy to just like have a peek through. But yeah, there's just so many different ones. Like, anyway, so yeah, I think this is just really cool. You can flip through it outside or with your friends and plan your future adventures and all that. So yeah, I just think that this is such a good one for summer, like when you're not in school and it's nice outside and you can start to plan them, your future travels and stuff. So yeah, that's that. That is all my recommendations for right now. I'm sure there's lots of other ones, but I don't have all my books here, and I just was like, you know, I want to film something right now. So that's, oh, one last one. This I almost forgot because I don't have it with me, because I lent it to somebody I used to work with, and I haven't gotten it back yet. It's called Other Minds. I forget who it's by. I made a video talking all about it, so if you want to go check that out, go for it. But yeah, that one is talking about cephalopod intelligence and how intelligence kind of has evolved twice in two very different routes. And I think that's just so cool to learn about, like during the summer when you're not in school. I'm doing a summer course, so I'm not reading a lot of nonfiction right now, because I have to read my textbook every day. But if you're not doing that, then I think it's really a good way to kind of keep learning throughout the summer. And some nonfiction books can just be awesome, and this one was so well written, it was so engaging, and yeah, I would totally recommend that one. I think it's good specifically for summer because it's talking about, like, you know, the ocean, and that reminds you of the beach, which reminds you of summer. So you see my thought process there. So yeah, that one is super cool. But yeah, now that's it, I think, for now at least. Yeah, so let me know if you give any of these books a try and what you think, and come back soon. We will see you some other day. Goodbye.